I once again am extremely honored and delighted to extend a warm welcome to our guests, dignitaries, and delegates to the 18th Annual Conference of Association of Industrial Psychiatry of India. I shall quickly acquaint you to today's schedule. In room 1, we will have 3 sessions, the first being from 9:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. and the second being from 11:30 a.m. to 1:30 a.m. p.m. This will be followed by a recess for lunch from 1:30 to 2, after which we will once again assemble for our third session from 2 to 3:30. After the sessions will commence the AGB from 3:30 p.m. onwards. So, without much ado, we will commence with our first session for the day. We take the privilege of inviting respected Dr. Colonel Suprakash Chaudhary as chairperson for this session. Sir, I kindly request you to conduct the proceedings henceforth. Thank you, sir.
Good morning, everybody. I welcome all the delegates and the speakers to this session on the second day of the 18th Annual National Conference of Indian Association of Industrial Psychiatry. For this session, we have 4 speakers. The first speaker is Professor Surgeon Commodore Dr. Kaushik Chatterjee. Slide. Dr. Chatterjee is an alumnus of AFMC and did his MD from AFMC. He's obtained a WHO fellowship in addiction medicine from Sydney, Australia. Previously, he was professor of psychiatry at Command Hospital, Kolkata and INHS Ashwini, Mumbai. His research interests are personality disorders, depression, substance use, mathematical modeling, positive mental health. He has a number of publications in national and international journals and also has contributed chapter to 3 books. His other interests are quizzing, travel, running half marathons. Today, he will be speaking on positive mental health delivery and prevention using digital technology. Dr. Kaushik Chatterjee, please.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for this opportunity to present to this audience. Let me just begin by sharing my screen. So I hope my screen is visible.
Yes.
I begin with greetings from Armed Forces Medical College in Pune to all of you. Today I shall talk about how COVID has changed our life, if there is an evidence at all for primary prevention with positive psychiatry, and do we need it? I shall talk about reaching the masses and can we deliver a meaningful message, the process that we have gone through over the last year. Let me begin by saying that when planners in India get down to work, most of them look only at the funds that accrue from taxes from the organized sector. So we lament poverty and we think that our plans will not be completed. But then there is this whole unorganized sector which pays indirect taxes and funds do come in and things do happen. With that caveat, let me start. Last year in March, when the specter of COVID was just looming, well before the lockdown, there was this survey which was done in Eastern India. And a whole lot of people felt worried and depressed. And then came the lockdown. We did our own survey at that time. In lockdown, most people were in their homes. They were facing all kinds of difficulties. Some were scared. Unfortunately, our patients did not stop coming, so we still had to go to the hospital in that time of uncertainty. And while that was on, Colonel V.S. Chauhan thought of and implemented this survey over the net of 987 participants, and we found that 31.9% of them, 32%, were experiencing significant anxiety. And since we could access them, we thought of delivering to them material which would hopefully make them feel better. So we issued a lot of advisories relating to the psychological effects of COVID and whatnot, and we acquired some expertise in the field. Things changed. The Indian numbers kept going up. They peaked somewhere around 10th September, and then they started coming down. And now, as you know, the numbers have started going up again, largely in Bombay and Pune. So what happened? In the month of June, on a Sunday, 14th of June, there was this celebrity suicide. The news media went into a frenzy. On 15th, we started getting calls from all kinds of our old patients who had been well till then, and from the worried well. We were sort of inundated with requests for help. The next morning, when we first met in our department, everybody, all psychiatrists, all mental health professionals, talked about receiving these inputs and this climate of gloom. And we said, let's look at if there is any evidence for primary prevention, that is health prevention and disease promotion, health promotion and disease prevention in psychiatry. We divided the work amongst three of us, and by lunchtime, we were surprised to see that there is quite a bit of hard evidence to say that primary prevention works in psychiatry, and we were surprised that nobody was doing it. Let's take a look at the evidence. All of you know about the evidence for sleep, for avoiding excess of caffeine, for avoiding alcohol and drug use. We are all aware of that. We found that physical exercise has a very strong preventive role in mental illnesses. And there is hard evidence to that effect. Exercise has a moderate to large significant effect on depression. There was even quantification about the type of exercise, the duration, the intensity. Again, there existed very hard evidence for this. For social connectedness, we found that it causally protects and promotes mental health. People with depression who perceive their social support as poorer have worse outcomes in terms of symptoms, recovery, and social functioning. How does social connectedness help? What is connectedness? The number or quality of ties. It discourages maladaptive coping behavior, encourages adaptive coping, like professional help seeking. Being connected to the community helps access formal help, reduces stigma, and leads to early interventions. Self-esteem seems to have a very positive role in primary prevention. Adults with higher global self-esteem were more likely to have higher well-being, better social relations, and more job satisfaction. Higher self-esteem at baseline, that is, in a community study, showed that it predicted fewer symptoms of both anxiety and depression in the future. So, there was a whole lot of stuff to go by, but to our surprise, nobody is doing it. There was even evidence to say that if there is purpose in life, it confers resilience and protects from negative life events. Those who had purpose were at reduced risk for mild cognitive impairment and had a slower rate of cognitive decline. So this was hard evidence for keeping dementia at bay. And there were instructions on how to build purpose in life. Resilience as an independent factor also had hard evidence. All this led us to believe that there was material out there which was not reaching the common people, the population of the country, who could implement this in their lifestyles and protect themselves from mental illnesses in the future. Mindfulness, which is India's gift to the world, had evidence to say that it increases subjective well-being, reduces psychological symptoms and emotional reactivity, and improves behavioral regulation. It is related to lower frequency of negative automatic thoughts and enhanced ability to let go of those thoughts. So all this we collected together and we put out as a digital handout. And to our surprise, it went viral. We started getting calls from all and sundry, including the Office of the Principal Scientific Advisor to the Government of India, who said that they wanted our permission so that they could take some of this information, use their advertising agency, and put it out to the population of the country so that citizens could access it. We, of course, had no objections. We had put it out in the public domain in the first place, and so it went. This is what they provided: building positive mental health in 9 simple steps. They put out a deck which looked something like this, giving simple tasks, 9 of them initially, that people could do. For each task, there was a page which gave certain instructions, like getting exercise, avoiding alcohol, practicing meditation. They moved, when any ad agency comes in, the evidence becomes a little shaky out there. So they moved out from our mindfulness to meditation, social connectedness, yes, learning new skills, reducing social media and other media exposure, eating healthy, and nature connectedness. They also added a link to not neglecting mental health, helping others with mental health issues, thus removing stigma, and listed certain symptoms. They tried to normalize this in the context, and it was released in both English and Hindi to reach a large population, and lots of links were given. Also links to various apps. And that is when we started thinking that all the material that was available for positive mental health could be put together in the form of an app or even a portal and made easily available to the population of India. And we looked at what could be done to build positive mental health, helping us cope, contribute, work productively, and realize full potential. We realized that once upon a time, the commonest tool which was used in this country was the plow. And today, it had become the smartphone. Almost everybody had access to a smartphone, and it was changing lives. It was cheap, it was ubiquitous. So we got a call again from the Principal Scientific Advisor's Office, putting AFMC, NIMHANS, and CDAC Bangalore in charge of creating the idea of a national digital wellness platform, which I at that time playfully called MANAS, the Mental Health and Normalcy Augmentation System. Surprisingly, it stuck, and that is what the project is called now. So this is what we told them. Suicides are the commonest cause of death in India in the 16 to 40 age group. That is what every survey over the last 5 years has said. Stigma associated with mental health leads to delay in help seeking. There's a shortage of professionals for managing mental health problems. Preventive mental health is not given any importance, and this is a shocker. There was a global happiness report which has come out every year from 2013. India's number has steadily declined from 113 to 140. Each one of our neighbors is ranked higher than us. It is axiomatic that collective mental health contributes to the gross domestic product of this country, and there is no positive mental health care delivery system. It is neither available, nor accessible, nor affordable. So here was an opportunity for the government to step in. Now, UNDP, the UN Development Program, has these 6 parameters for national happiness, and they compile the World Happiness Report. 4 of these 6 factors have strong mental health connections. So the government was also looking, as all world governments are, to impact the population through mental health. Unfortunately, it had neither been realized nor funded. And the stakeholders in mental health are many. Individuals, communities, foundations, private sector, families, NGOs, the science institutions like us, policymakers and governments, mental health professionals, and finally the media, which sometimes distorts but often delivers. For physical illnesses, primary, secondary, and tertiary healthcare is better delivered. But mental illness, because of the mental health care gap contributed by poverty of resources and stigma, it's a huge mental health care gap. In India, it's in the region of 86%. So primary prevention of physical illnesses, well, you have sports, gyms, rising awareness about diet, so many things. For mental wellness, there is nothing. There are many opportunities now. The digital health mission had just been announced last year. Wellness was becoming an important aspect of health. The Niti Aayog had planned wellness centers to reach the unreached. The shortage of human resources can be overcome through digital interventions for universal access, like computers, laptops, and smartphones with interesting, interactive, and innovative interfaces. So whatever we presented had to be affordable, feasible, acceptable, and sustainable. Coordination was required for early implementation. In the times of COVID, the people I'm working with, I've never met for the last 1 year. So somebody had to take ownership and provide seamless funding, which was very happily done by the principal scientific advisor to the Government of India under the Department of Science and Technology. And there had to be a privacy of personal data and security of data, otherwise the population would never use it. So, March to May, AFMC and NIMANS had been producing IEC material. In June, the Office of the Principal Scientific Advisor conceptualized the need to work for community mental health, and gradually, by September, brought the Ministry of IT, the Ministry of Health, National Informatics Center, and other stakeholders into its ambit and started seeing what could be done. So we decided to develop Manas to bridge this gap for universal accessibility, ease of use with Indian languages. Folks, there is a regional language mission, and eventually whatever we have will be available in 18 languages. There's a lot, I won't say a lot, but there was some stuff available on the internet which has absolutely no relevance to the Indian population. And we realized that you have to target specifically different issues across age groups. Now, I have already told you about the need to maintain anonymity and avoid stigma by ensuring data privacy. We thought of a womb to tomb approach, but we were not, we didn't have the bandwidth to take on all age groups. So Nimhans decided to take on adolescents with their product. The two of them actually, one is called Gurukul and one is Manmar. We at AFMC decided to target young adults. Between these two groups, it is 41% of the Indian population and most of the young productive population, the India of tomorrow. So we again playfully created this acronym: Young Indians, Smart, Talented and Natural, Youngistan. This is our portal under which we hope to provide a whole set of services to the population. So we were the chefs at this cafeteria, Nimhans and AFMC. The eventual food suppliers are going to be the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Women and Child Welfare. The service, the waiters, will be CDAC, and the user interaction, user experience and design experts. We have had many rounds of peer review. That is, our food critics are AIMS, Delhi, PGI, Chandigarh. Our food inspectors, the people who ensure that our security is met, privacy concerns are addressed. Our National Informatics Center, SETS Chennai, which looks at cybersecurity, MITI, the IT ministry, and our eventual clientele is each and every citizen of India. And of course, it will be a free service available. So any person anywhere in the world is potentially going to address this. What are our strengths in FMC? We have psychiatrists, clinical psychologists, residents. The Department of Community Medicine has provided health communication to the entire armed forces and beyond for decades. We have strong administrative support. We have a culture and ethos of physical and mental resilience. And we deal in problem-solving approach. We are used to delivering under pressure. Nimhans has many strengths. They have major research-funded projects in mental health promotion. They have already brought out digital mental health apps like the PushD Plus app for depression and self-care. Mental health initiatives for youth like Youth Pro, Leading Minds, Smart Riders, they have experience there. If you look at CDAC, you've all heard of it. They have domain expertise in intelligent systems. So, we set out to develop modules focused on life skills and core psychological processes and deliver it in an app format, which is engage the person in a gamified manner, promote positive attitudes with focus on wellness, strengthen life skills. Whatever tools we used, we decided long back had to be evidence-based, pragmatic, valid, and robust. CDAC was creating the National Wellness Hub, and in the future, involving the Indian Language Mission and also various national programs, we wanted to integrate with eSanjeevani, that is, taken the illness aspect also. And finally, we will be using artificial intelligence and machine language, looking at wearable devices and generate data which will enable policy formulation. The idea is a paradigm shift from illness to wellness, target across age groups, provide cascading benefits using technology as a force multiplier to overcome various constraints that we face today and stigma. So we are looking at a pilot project which has already been approved and funded. We are involving stakeholders. The ownership has been decided, and we are already hitting our milestones for time-bound delivery. So this is what the Manas platform is going to look like. And we will ensure that the citizen is guaranteed data security and privacy. Various people were involved in this project, and though physical health is addressed, we wanted to focus on mental health. This is what we initially thought would our landing page would look like when we had involved no digitizers, no coders, that you will click on one of the various languages and you can move ahead. But thankfully, other developers have come in. They are experts in user interaction who decide how to deliver the material. Their user experience, that is, what emotion is generated in the user, which will sustain their engagement with this app or portal. So now we are looking at delivering good sleep. You will be surprised that though our textbooks have so much on it, very little hard information is gathered together on the net. So we want to provide information, measures, and some interventions for individuals to practice themselves. What kind of intervention? About what is sleep? What are the stages? What are the dimensions of good sleep? What is poor sleep? What factors affect sleep? And how does poor sleep affect health, specifically mental health? Somewhere in our offering, we will make measures available so that people get an idea or a feedback of how their sleep is. And also, these valid evidence-based measures can help the individual track their improvement in sleep should they choose to do so. We will provide interventions for sleep hygiene, give them a sleep diary on their smartphones, give them relaxation training and various behavior techniques for better sleep. This is just an example. Each of those 14 themes we are developing this way. So, these are the first 9 that we will take on. Good sleep, as you saw, was the first one. To summarize, there is evidence for primary prevention in psychiatry, hard evidence, which we find is not reaching the population and thus not helping bridge the mental health gap. There's a lack of trained personnel, there's lack of access, and there is stigma together with constraints of delivery. Digital technology provides a unique opportunity to reach this mental health care to the entire population. It requires funding. It requires a lot of intersectorial coordination. I mean, the number of meetings have been on to try and get this delivered is not funny. So smartphones can be used to deliver it directly to the individual. Now you will say there is a section of the population which can't afford smartphones, which doesn't have it. Well, the Niti Aayog has started this digital health project for last mile connectivity. And these digital health kiosks will be available around the country from 2 months later. The trials of what we have talked about are about to begin by 30th of April. Thank you. I have finished. I would welcome questions.
Thank you, Kaushik, for an excellent presentation. This is a very important topic and of great practical importance, and especially in the future, this will be modified in various ways for delivery of primary prevention in psychiatry. Questions I have asked for in the chat box, probably they will come. In the meantime, since time is short, I thank Dr. Kaushik Chatterjee once again for an excellent presentation, and we move on to the next topic, COVID-19 and industrial productivity, presented by Colonel Jyoti Prakash. Colonel Jyoti Prakash is an alumnus of AFMC. He also did his MD from AFMC. Subsequently, he has done a string of qualifications, including in management, in most importantly, child psychiatry, and also a WHO fellowship from John Hopkins, USA. He has long teaching experience of 22 years for undergraduates and 19 years in teaching postgraduates. He is an examiner in number of universities. He has been a very busy publisher and published nearly 100 papers and also published 4 chapters in books and with numerous citations in both international and national journals. He has been awarded the Kekobad Award for standing first at MD Psychiatry in Pune, the Ravi Pandey Memorial Young Scientist Award by Delhi Psychiatric Society, JECT Best Investigator of the Year by American Psychiatric Association, Kripal Singh Award of the IPS, the PPA Award of the Industrial Psychiatry Association, and Aruna Madan Award for Distinguished Community Work by Association of Industrial Psychiatry. He is also a certified BLS and ACLS instructor, a medical educator and life skill trainer. He is an assessor for NAPH. His special interests are in psychodrama, creative writing, and creating very interesting videos, and of course, writing Hindi poetry, which is not mentioned here. We have the pleasure of listening to him on various occasions. I will now invite Dr. Jyoti Prakash to start his presentation.
Thank you, sir. I'll request the permission for sharing the screen be given to me.
Yes, please.
Am I visible, sir?
Yes, you are visible.
Thank you, sir, for such kind words. Mentors in the audience and dear colleagues. This is a photograph of PM Care COVID Hospital, Bihta, where I had gone as a director in the thick of the COVID at Patna. The side thing you see are the Maurya Hotel, where we had been, it had been our humble abode for a few days. And we used to go 20 kilometers in a vehicle to visit our hospital, do the work throughout the day and all. These guards you see there, when we were just moving from there, they were almost in tears because they said 3 months back when you had come, we had nothing, there was no business and there was no earning. It is because of you all that we have been surviving or probably sustaining our family based on the incomes, which is because of you doctors staying here. So this is the kind of impact or probably sledgehammer effect which was done by COVID on the industry called hospitality. And today we will be discussing on similar such impacts done by COVID, positive or negative. With this, I'll come on to my topic of the day, that is COVID and industrial mental health. So what does a industry is to mental health? First is income. So the thing is that with income comes the wealth, and wealth is probably, even if it do not buy happiness, it definitely has enough capacity to rent happiness. Then the neighborhood, if you see, like in our setting also, we saw wherever the cantonment was there, Sadar Bazaar came up, and with all industry, a lot of families settled by. So the industry is a significant for building up families or neighborhood around. Dignity of labor. This is what industry has given to most of us, as it can give money, opportunities for many people. Industrial revolution has brought out significant amount of urbanization, and the quality of life we are living today is all courtesy this. It has given the kind of things which have been built by industry, has given our social stature or symbol. Industry has brought in a lot of trust, where we know that there it will keep us safe by way of security, benefits, pay raise. It has also apprised of our rights, that by just being it, you are not a mere probably a worker, you have a right, and those rights are probably rights to promotion, employees' rights to health, compensations, and finally the work where we do the kind of vigor which we do instill the youthfulness, which I definitely feel so. But we had an attack a year which went viral. It broke 2020, and the repair is going to take another 2 years. And it definitely caused significant impact of industry. One, by way of the infection. Second, by way of the lockdown which ensued later. So only thing productive which we saw during this lockdown was probably cough and sputum. The impact on the input was significant. The raw materials got stranded. Procurement was difficult. The process of manufacturing got shut down because of the shutdown of the factory, lockdown, and reduced labor, or probably migration of the labor back to their hometown. And output resultantly, there were many bare infrastructures standing tall without any population smiling within them. But if you see, the worst affected was those which could actually affect mental health and literacy was leisure, hospitality, wholesale and retail trade, education and health services. And what happened much worse was probably the customer realized that all these things were probably flimsy, and the demands subsequently reduced significantly. But some industries did get overstressed. For example, medical, where we had to put on this cumbersome dress, we had fog and mist in our goggles by way of our own exhalations. We worked in an environment which was too humid, and we had to come out every 4 hours to take a breather, probably, or change and go back. And there were no hospital beds for any other kind of patients at that point of time, which affected significantly as regards to morbidity, if not mortality. Pharmaceuticals industry also got further stressed, though not by way of other things, but definitely while making medicines and vaccines, what took probably 8 to 10 years was accelerated in a probably overdrive. If you see, these are the phases where actually most of the phases were either skipped, combined, and probably jumped. Hydroxychloroquine, as if the whole industry were manufacturing this only. Medical equipment manufacturers, they had been pretty busy making ventilators or other things which can effectively replace ventilators. Sanitation workers, they had the worst of the time, because in fact in our COVID hospital also, we gave them PPE kit each time so that whatever the biohazards they were picking up, they should not get infected, but they were not used to this concept, and the education imparting them was too difficult, and often we picked them up bare hand without this protection and educate them again. Law enforcers, it was the real time challenging things to enforce social distancing, masking, and lockdown. And for those, many people really worked hard. In fact, there is a Mamta Mishra here who was 8 months pregnant but still working on duty, while her husband was also a sub-inspector in nearby duty station. Home delivery boys, they were there throughout. Probably that was the only saving grace, where we felt the proxy hotel is, or probably cafeteria is around us for a change of test. But All these things led to long working hours for those who were stressed industry. They were fatigued, they were diminished performance. There were times where we felt we became casual, or probably we had not worn mask in the manner we should do, carelessness, poor concentration, and at times impaired decision making. There were a lot of files or documents which were there either inside or outside, and we could not do case sheet writing outside, or probably documentation and sending reports from inside. So a lot of barriers were made which required meticulousness of observation and implementation. And the rapidity of response somehow reduced the quality, and it was visible in the kind of N95 and other masks coming to us. So quality check significantly reduced. And the thing which was thinking of buying, I got delayed by 3 days, and same thing was costing me twice the price, because I was only late by just 3 days, and the demand had such kind of overcharging has started. All these things were pitfall of lockdown. And these people who were actively working while the show was on, there was a lot of fear of infection or transmissions among them because of increased risk of interacting with potentially infected people. And while they were working at work, they generally lived at probably in the hospital for us or a nearby hotel. Fear of going home or probably spreading the infection to the family, and while family away from their primarily working earning member, their concerns of how to man every day, bring out the grocery, and the welfare of the person who is on duty was equally anxiety provoking. There were such immense psychological issues in underutilized sectors as well. There were fear of uncertainty of employment, because most of the industries had shut down and those contract laborers were not feasible. So the wrath finally came on daily wages, those manual laborers, those migrant laborers who had to probably even during the shutdown walk their ways in the railway lines back to their home. Many had to work from home. The concept was good, but after some time, even the industry got fed up and they started having pay cuts, which was, and the fear of the final pay cut or probably getting excluded from the work was continuously on them, hanging like a sword. And there was extreme sense of lack of sense of purpose and all of the society. All these things which you felt was important, money, prestige, and all those things, finally was found that probably bare sustenance was adequate enough at this point of time. So there was significant lack of sense of purpose or role in the society. And there was a sense of despair or lack of control with the lockdown, everything uncertain around, health situation too. Probably even if I had a toothache, I thought I'll let the COVID pass away, but COVID was passing too slowly for me to take care of my toothache. So there was a kind of sense of loss of despair and lack of control, which reminded me of one old dialogue. अकेला मच्छर ही सारे ये को ये बना देता है dash, everybody knows it. But probably that kind of the helplessness situation was visible at that point of time, where you were unable to do anything which you thought is within your capabilities. Social isolation, everybody was there in the bubble, though they were talking probably by their mobile. They had increased their sociality, but only by way of calls or threats or those radio signals which were going through the mobile signal. So social isolation was too much at that point of time. And there was so much of tumor which we very willingly passed on to each other, and it grew in mammoth proportion every day. Let's give you an example. In fact, after the COVID vaccine also, this news came up, which had to be subsequently stopped down, that hospital lockdown as first COVID vaccine patient starts eating other patients. So as if the vaccine is making people zombies. There was another, that cannabinoid oil probably is a thing to fight against coronavirus outbreak, which we had known during the college, we would have done much more. cocaine kills. So anything of substance was matter of substance during those period. Universal steps for psychological well-being will be talking, because the productivity is directly proportional to mental well-being in an industrial scenario, that is industrial mental health. We need to structure our routine. The way we are going, we have to probably make it a bit novelty seeking, interspersed with boring and interesting. Develop hobbies, and that too for all the three, that is tan, man and dhan. So for build one hobby for building wealth, one for building health, and one to discover and build your inner self. I found this a very perfect opportunity to enhance my capability or resume, and definitely so. There were a lot of universities pumping a lot of data, Harvard Edu, or probably Future Learn, Creative Learn. So there were a lot of things where I could find things of my interest and enhance my lateral knowledge or empowered myself further. We found out the thing called yoga or meditation or mindfulness, those things which we probably ignored during our other activity, grew salience. And that is how, when we found how important this was for reducing our mental improving our mental well-being and reducing our anxiety and concern on unnecessary things. Quality time with family we had to plan, because otherwise it was just watching TV and movie. But after some time we did started spending each other time, knew each other better, and probably the bond harmony or probably teamwork was much more effective. This time I really found out to declutter self, my computer, my mobile space, and believe me, I had enough space metaphorically as well as actually to breathe. Time was there enough to finish pending work. I really found out there are a lot of things with regards to my finances and accounting which I could complete during this period. Third thing which we should be doing is reduce elements of uncertainty. So there were many things which came in industrial mode. The government was thinking and compassionate, empathic about this. So they built things to ensure minimum wages while at work or work at home. Some sustenance amount of daily wages were thought. How much it was implemented, I don't know, but there's definitely a worth of thought and would have been really helpful. Reliable and responsible social media, I think finally, slowly they started working on it. Some of them were really useful, but otherwise if we should stick to reliable sites. We really need to reduce burnout of overstressed industry. In our COVID hospital also, the people were working for 2 to 3 days with a gap of 2 days as a rest. So that kind of burnout address needs to be given. And finally, creating a sense of purpose, that we are contributing to a larger purpose. It isn't, when you start doing it, then you feel how much addiction is there to it. Let me give you a kind of scenario to explain. then contribute to society by reducing spread of infection. So probably if each individual does their job, this has a cumulative effect, which we don't realize. Let's realize by this. And third and foremost, striving for those activities which lets you find your own self.
ठीक तो सेबी से ये करो हाँ
this COVID actually gave a lot of opportunity for me to finding myself. I like to put this in 4 liners. न कर यूं उल्लास तू खींच के लक्ष्मण ने देखा, एकाकी में ही गौर से मैंने खुद को आईने में देखा, चंद बंदिशों ने खोल दिए हैं आज दरवाजे कई परम, तेरे संग भी जीना चलो सीख लेंगे हम. With this, I hope that there are some learnings in these that will bring out a smile to people who are so industriously working in this industry. Let's build up quality if not able to do quantity. I finished my topic here. I would invite any queries or questions related if there is. Thank you.
Thank you, Jyoti, for an excellent presentation. Before I let you go, we want to get enlightened from your experience. You see, the background is about your experience in Bihar.
Sir.
Now, there has been a lot of controversy in the media that while Maharashtra, Kerala, Punjab, etc., they have very high occurrence of COVID, but in Bihar, the occurrences was not that much. And especially we saw during the elections, nobody was following the COVID norms. But still there was, at least there was no reports of lot of cases. So what was your experience in the COVID hospital at Patna?
Sir, we also had very less number of infection there. In fact, when we met, I met principal health secretary there. He actually said, thank God you all are there, so we knew whom to bank on to if something goes wrong, but luckily things are not going wrong. So, and we found people not taking that kind of precaution which otherwise should be taking. So I don't know. In fact, I have wrote a narrative that probably the Bihari gods are more effective or the dahi chuda, but something was there which did matter. However, we did not have any, we had a PSM resident, but no PSM specialist who did a work on those grounds. Neither we could pick up anything in specific.
No, but at least you are confirming, because one of the narrative is that they were hiding cases, they were not reporting.
No.
It seems there was a lower occurrence of cases, for whatever be the reason.
Sir, there were like AIMS was quite known there. A lot of people were going to AIMS. We were under AIMS, so we generally used to share the burden or the overflow of the AIMS. But even AIMS was not as busy as we expected there at a point of time. And definitely we were doing quality there, but quantity was not a bothersome. But however, sir, if you understand the COVID, the precaution and all those things, as I say, sir, even if whether there are one patient or 4 patients in a roof, we need 4 walls. So minimum amount of medical officer, nursing officer, those were required, were mammoth in proportion, because they had to man round the clock. One, the reception part of it, and second, the acute ward and the ICU part.
That is a very important information we have got from a person who was on the spot. So we can believe that findings. So this is a very important thing that we came to know. But apart from that, Jyoti, thank you very much for your excellent presentation as usual.
Thank you, sir. So kind.
We will now move on to the next topic. The next speaker is Mr. MSVN Raju. Mr. MSV Narasimha Raju, he is a BSc Honours in Life Sciences from Sambalpur University and an MBA in International Business Management and a graduate diploma in Industrial Relations. Presently, he is Head Integrated Solutions, India and Southeast Asia, Sartorius Stadium Biotech. MSV Narasimha Raju has over 30 years experience in business management in biopharmaceuticals and bioprocessing engineering. He served in John White, now Pfizer, in the Operation Flood program of National Dairy Developmental Board. Currently, he is head of integrated solutions for India and Southeast Asia at Sartorius Stedil Biotech, a German international bioprocess technology solution provider. He is a keen team player with a creative and entrepreneurial leadership style to work consultatively with colleagues and customers alike. His key professional strengths include business development, relationship management, cross-functional team management, and people management. I welcome Mr. MSV Narasimha Raju.
Thank you, Dr. Chaudhary, for your very kind and effusive words about me. By definition, I call myself an industrial worker, a salesman practicing for last 30 years. May I seek your permission to share my slides so that I can begin my.
Please, please.
A very good afternoon to all the Dr. Chaudhary and the elite of psychiatrists present in this conference. It's a rare opportunity to be speaking in a meeting which is not sales. Hence, I hope it is stress-free for me. Being a sales personnel, I would like to today speak about what industrial selling is about. I am not an academician like most of you are. I like to speak from my gut, really bringing out my own experiences in industrial selling. So that's about me. And so I like to, in the interest of time, I like to put what is selling. There are multitude of selling methods. There are direct selling, indirect selling. I do not like to drivel into that. I would like to stick to my talk to industrial selling, which is essentially what I represent. So the industrial selling, in a short framework, I like to put Michael Porter's principles of competitive strategy, which kind of gives a framework. What is this sales is about, how it is playing in the market. What Porter calls as a competitive strategy, which is actually selling in an environment which is an interplay of multitude of players and stakeholders. Like, for example, the buyer power, the supplier power, threat of new entrants, and threat of substitution. This is in the center of that, if I may put myself, is what I need to interplay. The salesman is in the center of in the eye of the storm, where he has to navigate himself and manage all the multitude of challenges that comes, and that, of course, results in some stresses. I would like to attempt to bring out a few that I believe are important to bring forth to the learned participants in this conference, and probably seek solutions to the community of industrial sales personnel, so that we become more healthier in mind and productive in performance, and be good to the family and, of course, society and the country at large. Salesmen tend to be weather beaten, as you see that, because the profession of sales, particularly the industrial sales I represent, is about managing everything which is external. It's a sales profession that manages everything which is external to the business. Like, he has to manage competition, manage market, manage everything which is not in control, as opposed to, for example, an accounting professional who probably is inside the organization managing situations. So at an individual level, what kind of stresses an industrial salesperson goes through? As an external, pressures like expectations from all the stakeholders, be it a customer, be it colleagues, be it the environment. There are many expectations that a salesman has to manage and meet them. There are also factors that influence on the performance and the mind of a salesperson, which are economic and functional dynamics. Economics are profitabilities, things like profitabilities, margins, market shares. Functional dynamics are interfacing with many stakeholders, be it a customer base, be it internal colleagues, and society. A salesperson also has to manage the strengths and weaknesses, and how is the challenge in managing these two important attributes. And of course, how are his own or her own value system is impacting and causing stress in his performance is what I like to also shortly bring it out. So let me just address what are the stresses that come out of expectations. If I may divide them broadly into three groups, let's say there is a buying organization in the industrial scenario, there is a selling organization which I represent, and there is a social environment. These are the three attributes that a salesperson has to encounter and manage and navigate himself or herself. Looking at a buying organization, in a selling situation, in an industrial selling, it is not a transaction anymore. It's about a contribution of many stakeholders, broadly speaking, the user groups who normally look at specifications, benefits of a specifications derived out of that, how that to be used, how is it functionally better to discharge his own deliverables to the organization. Technical, who will screen in multitude of technical specifications, screen in and screen out, and that's where the salesperson is called upon to manage that so that his product is sold. And there are economic, of course, the buying stakeholders look at economic requirement, what is the return on investment, and how those are managed. And there are economic expectations within the organization to manage profitability, to manage market shares, because the profession of sales, like in Army, I think there are some colleagues from the Army in this conference, there are no runners. You either win or you perish. So that's exactly what is sales. I do not like to say we are as devoted as an Army person, but just to say that in sales, there is no runner. Either you win or you are gone for that. So that's exactly. In a selling organization, there are pressures, for example. Superior pressures, managers pressures, like joke around in a selling environment. If the manager takes longer time to deal with the situation, he's thinking about it. If a subordinate takes time, he's procrastinating. There are peer pressures, healthy and unhealthy, competition of performance, how do I do better than him, etc. These are things cause stress. And there are self-expectations. I have done well, somewhere can I do again, or why am I unable to do well? These are the stresses that also play on the mind and cause distress, cause performance impediments, and that is something which is an important point to consider. Social environment is well known. Society expects you to be somebody. There's a famous thing called a neighbor's son has done well. Why are you not doing well? There are pressures. There are esteem needs. I have done something. I have done well. How I need recognition in the society. And these are all the things which contribute together to the expectations within this selling environment. There are sources of stress in the economic and functional. There are many things I could talk for want of time. There are business quotas. I said sales is at the end of the day is about numbers. So a number of this year is no more the number of next year. So there is always elasticity for that number, and that's something we need to manage always. And profitability, because in a market where profitability is an important issue for a sales function, a company to sustain itself. There are market share pressures. How do you manage market shares in a complex environment as it is? And in a situation where the separation in a company is non-voluntary, how is an individual taking that stress upon him and readjusting to a new environment when he finds another job? In a knowledge-based society where we are all in industrial sales, knowledge is an ever-expanding situation. And today we are in a situation in the internet age, the customer is sometimes more aware than you in understanding a particular technology. So how does a salesman navigate that and manage or ramp up his skills to meet the requirement of the customer? Sales is about time, that you need to manage everything within a given time. If the time is money, if you lose time, then you have lost an opportunity. That's exactly what. As a sales manager, of course, I see biodatas from young salespeople applying for a job in my company. Most of them write, I enjoy travel. Actually, travel is stress. Travel impacts the life work management. And there are cross-functional collaborations. I work in an organization, I have at least 26 collaborators for me to succeed in a sales scenario. So how do I manage that? And most of them in a flat organization, like I work in a global environment, most of them are not accountable to me. So how do I manage a collaboration, and that's a cause of stress. And organizational bureaucracy, I do not need to speak about that. That's endemic, and that's something which is also impacting the salesperson. An important aspect of that I would like to bring up is how is the industrial salesperson managing in a pandemic situation. Jyoti Prakash spoke elaborately about that, but I just would like to touch. In a selling environment, when we meet in a direct selling situation like industrial selling, we always meet the customer face to face. And there are many things a communication happens, and communication is not just verbal. There are a lot of non-verbal cues, flashes which come in when I'm talking to my customer or stakeholder, which is straight away out of equation in the pandemic, because we do not any longer meet a customer face to face. That means more than 70% of the communication cues are missing, and that's a cause of stress. Not only the communication stress, but also it brings in additional operating stress, because to travel in a bubble, long distances by car, etc., is in itself is a stress. So this is a major stress that industrial salesperson I personally encounter, that I do not have the full advantage of my customer's interface and the cues I could derive it to make a positive use in my sales pitch or environment. However, the stress comes in strengths and weaknesses. I have encountered many situations in my experience. There are people who underestimate themselves. Therefore, they do not deploy their full potential to succeed. They would feel at the beginning itself that they can't do this. And therefore, because when a success is a function of many things, that I always believe as an experienced sales manager, that you give everything that you have at your disposal, and still there is an uncertainty because there are other factors at play, which are emotional aspects of a customer, there are rational aspects of a customer, highly knowledgeable competition, and many factors such as things. So at the beginning itself, a salesperson is underestimating himself. He's not giving his full potential in his endeavor. That means he's already excluding, or he's already diminishing his possibility of success. And this is a stress which can be helped out in my mind. And there are cases of overestimation. I see a lot of colleagues, I personally myself have had situations where an underpreparedness, because there is always an element of surprise, which in a sales environment, particularly in a negotiation phase, for example, suddenly there is an element coming up for which you are not prepared. There are creative tools available in a sales management that mostly address the sales navigation, not individuals' mental preparedness to handle those surprises. So this underpreparedness tends to cause loss of opportunities more often than not. And I myself had many bloomers where I was underprepared to manage the situation. A competitor would suddenly bring up a situation which you have not factored in your original planning. So how do you handle that situation? What is the situational management requirement? You are underprepared, and therefore you fall flat and lose. So that's the cause of stress, because you lose a performance expectation out of that. There are many situations unable to manage the weakness. I have grown as a young salesperson from 1983. I have seen a lot of my superiors then would always teach me how do I improve my weakness, would always teach me how do I improve weakness. And I always think about, these are my weakness. If I do not work on, I would probably fail. But there is always a situation where one can always focus on his own strengths, has strengths, and then perform. So this management of weakness and strength is something which is an important aspect. We need training on that. We need to understand. I may know one or two things. Not all the sales community understand that. People tend to always get withdrawn into a situation that I am unable to do. I have these weaknesses. I am thrown into a job situation, and therefore I cannot perform, and that leads to a lot of distress. And in the process, they actually do not understand that hidden and latent talents that they have. Probably that could have been deployed in a situation for better purpose and better productivity. And how are the personal values of an individual working at work? Is it a work, a compulsion that you tried for so many other jobs, you ended up in this job, or is it a passion that you need to do? Because I have seen a manager of mine has written a book on volitional engagement, which leads to the highest productivity. So are people really passionate about a job? Are they compelled to put into that? And if they are compelled to, how the mental makeup can be bettered so that they develop a kind of an affinity, a passion for the job that they're doing, because human potential, of course, is best achieved when he is passionate about that, leave aside an volitional engagement. And how does one handle failure and even success? In sales, for example, my hit ratio in my sales environment is about 30%. I'm lucky. I thank my stars. Out of 100 attempts, I succeed in 30. In other words, I fail in about 70 attempts every year. So that is a cause of stress. But do I stop by failing in 70, or do I look at what I have achieved that? So there are situations where a failure, particularly in industrial sales, where the tenure of a sales engagement lasts from weeks to several months, even years. That means you have to have a frustration tolerance for a long engagement. At the end of the day, you're not very sure. Of course, you can always predict a situation by using the tools of sales, by your own personal engagement and executive understanding and experience. But there is a competition who's as wise or probably more wise than us, and therefore we definitely fail. As I said, I fail 70 attempts out of 100 attempts. So therefore, how does a salesperson manage this stress of failure? And there are also situations of success, for example. We succeed in a 30% of success, and that means that increases the threshold of expectation to another level. From an organization point of view, from an individual point of view, be it a success, then success begets more success, and how do you want to achieve more? The longingness to achieve more and not really mindful of the reality and possibility is a cause of stress. And how do we manage that? And how does an individual look at people and relationship? Does a salesperson look at the people, like in a situation where we are dependent on plethora of external influences, more people, and how do we look at people? If we do look at with empathy, do I look at them understanding, or do we look at with a prejudiced mindset that he is like that, nothing can be done with him, and look at a relationship with empathy and say maybe the relationship will help me to do the thing, or the relationship is not required. By thinking either way, probably we are excluding a possibility of an element of success that possibly can contribute into a sales thing. So this is something which we often encounter personally, and that's the cause of stress as well. And motivating factors is an important factor that it's not just about motivation of a salesperson. When a salesperson is engaging with a customer, he's actually talking to the bunch of emotions, rational evaluations of a customer. So what is actually motivating? I've seen a lot of sales situations where we brag about just a competition is being bad or our price is low. Maybe that's not motivating him. I have had a situation where we are an international company. We have multiple sites to produce the same equipment and supply. And in a situation, we were actually talking to a customer saying it is done in India, it is the cheapest, it is as good as anywhere else, etc. But we have been failing year after year. At the end, we realized what actually motivating was the individual managing director of the company. Was he always wanted a European source because he has studied in Europe and he has an affinity to Europe. Nothing about quality attributes, nothing about price, but he exactly wanted something from Europe, and that's his motivator. And everybody ignored that, thinking that the specification of the product, the key benefits of the product, the price, everything we were talking, actually unmindful of actual motivator of the customer. So when you are unable to actually understand the motivation, because when you are engaging in a sales environment, you are engaging to a dark phase, in a dark zone. You do not really know. Relationships are not formed by two transactional engagements. A lot of my colleagues always say that I met an ex-guy in an airport lobby and therefore I know him very well. It's just an acquaintance. So relationships are much deeper, much deeper, and they need to be mutual. And unless that is learned and that is picked up as a strength, we cannot actually deploy and make our own judgment. So that's an important aspect of. So we need to understand both these things. So this is where a sales community and industrial sales would require motivators. And of course, the cultural diversity in a global business environment, the cultural diversity is everybody's known issue. What I call is a grasshopper in US is a pest. In China, it is a pet. In Thailand, it is a snack. So that is the magnitude of cultural diversity we see. And how does a salesman cope with his own colleagues, peers, and his customers from different cultural backgrounds. There are cultural cues come into play to understand them. In a situation like pandemic, we don't even have a possibility to meet them. That's a huge source of stress that need to be understood. Another aspect which is important, which I encounter more often than not, is a hierarchical but flat organization. In India, for example, we have all grown where parents always expected every kid 20, 25 years back to pick up a government job and be successful. That was the criteria of success. The changing situation of economy in India, private enterprise has come into play, multinationals are there, therefore the organization matrix is completely changing from hierarchical to flat organization. So we culturally are attuned in our home, for example, father decides everything, mother decides everything, we are hierarchical more often than not. So therefore, in an organization, the expectation also that you would like to, growth for me means I'm an AGM, I like to become a DGM and the general manager and vice president. But in a multinational situation, the flat organization provide a lot of opportunities to laterally grow. And these are the stresses, because we feel that lateral growth, given a lot of our colleagues feel that more burden is placed on the shoulders rather than a growth opportunity provided. This is a cause of stress. We need to adjust these cultures, and this is where the community of sales needs some help. Last, I would like to just bring up to the community where all can we seek the help of industrial psychiatrists, because at an industry level, of course, like a stress for me, I'm in the bioprocess engineering business, a little bit of life science, a little bit of pharmacology. But if there is somebody industry in car and an IT industry or whoever is making a television, the specific stressors of that industry will be native to that particular industry. So industrial psychiatrists probably would need to look into deep, because behind every industrial sales, there is an individual who is encountering his own idiosyncratic or his own specific challenges. A little bit more work into that, and so that it comes back to the industry as a help, so that we understand our difficulties. There are solutions available from you, the psychiatrist community. How does an industrial psychiatrist can help us in an organizational level? Collaborate with the HR department. No disrespect if there are HR people in this group, but HR departments have been very relatively new. They have been just moving from being administrative department to HR department. They like to be a little bit more paycheck administrators rather than, or they make a gross estimate of motivation of sales or difficulties of sales. They organize training, skill training, etc. But they're all grossly done for a department, for an industry. But there is an individual. Individual has his own problem. What is a problem to a Peter may not be a problem to a Paul in the same industry. So the HR departments must look into individual situation rather than grossly finding that this particular sales department has these solutions like a tablet, it may or may not work. So I think the HR level engagement, the psychiatrist community should be able to somehow find ways and means to reach out to HR department, empower them to understand individuals in an organization better, and find ways and means to train them better. And of course, holistic assessment of individuals at the entry level. Like there are requirements for an industry, my industry or any industry. So there are attributes of warrant. There are mental skills required. There are personality skills. There are cultural skills required. If these are better assessed at the entry level, probably you are not allowing somebody who is completely a misfit into a situation, thereby he goes into a drain, rather than help that individual not to venture into this, rather look for other opportunities. Because we have seen a lot of people, attrition is an important aspect. A lot of people join with an expectation that by the name of the company, it's a multinational, I will do well, everything is fine. But once they are in the shoes of the job, they realize that they're actually not cut to this. And therefore, then starts the problem, then they leave early. It is no good to an organization, because organization invests in an individual, time is money. And for an individual also, because he would have lost precious time of his career, he or she would have lost precious time. So therefore, the HR departments, sure they do evaluations. I'm aware of what assessments we do, but we tend to be a little bit gross in our assessment rather than looking at individual to a particular job. So that's where we seek help. And at an individual level, of course, accessibility to mental health. Like a salesperson cannot go to a psychiatrist as he could possibly go to a dentist or an ophthalmologist. There is a taboo in India. I cannot go out. I'm educated. Even I probably will not say I have met a psychiatrist because I have a problem. Because there are social issues, problems, stigmas attached to that. So therefore, mental health accessibility to a sales community is very important. And you must think about it, how do you help us? There are possibilities to provide. And not only that, supposing in an industry, the boss is normally a counselor. The boss has a vested interest. HR has a vested interest because they would always probably read my own problem in the prism of their own requirements of the job. And therefore, there is a vested interest and probably there is a conflict of interest. Therefore, a neutral platform is paramount important to help an individual to be mentally better prepared, mentally healthy, and productive for them. And given the situation that we are in, how long it will last, even if it is abates, the COVID I am talking, digital platform to reach, probably I should be able to log into some situation and put out my problems and have a counseling online so that I have the privacy. When I mean the community has a privacy of our difficulties and discussions and then probably answers. And thereby probably we avoid a situation where a trivial things like a famous word, battles fought are very, very great, but the cause often was trivial. Probably the difficulty of a very small problem, if it is brought up to a professional psychiatrist, probably the solution will take away a bigger problem coming and it will help the industry. So this is in short my presentation, and thank you so much for the time and for the opportunity given. I will be very happy to answer any questions on my industry, on any specific questions to sales.
Thank you, Mr. MSV Narasimha Raju. It was an extremely enlightening talk which encompassed various aspects of stress in sales. Though I have very little knowledge of sales, but my feeling for a long time was that one of the problems with sales is that there is a obsession with increasing the rates. Last year you had sales of 100. This year it should be 110. Next year it should be 120. The thing is, at a stage it will come that it is not possible to increase further. Then the person will be deemed as useless. That must be a big problem. How do you face this type of challenges?
Yeah, there are many ways we do. Of course, I said to you, sales is at the end of the day is a game of business. If you don't do more business, the companies cannot sustain. If the companies cannot sustain, the other aspects come into play. What we do, what I train my salespeople to look at, improve the horizon of possibilities. Maybe the possibility in a particular account or a particular city or town are limited. There are ways to do about. So that is the only way. I do not have a luxury to say I can't grow anymore.
Thank you very much. That was a very, very enlightening talk. Because of paucity of time, I'm sorry, we will not be able to take any questions. They may be coming up in the chat box. We'll tell you about that.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, sir, talking to all of you, and I enjoyed my talk. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Right. Now we move to the next topic. Psychosocial stressors in IT industry, particular reference to COVID, by Mr. Bhavraju Vishnu. This is a topic which has affected us also. Mr. Bhavraju, you may be aware that Pune has also a lot of IT industry, and especially during this COVID times, we have had quite a few people from IT industry coming to us for consultation. Since most of the IT people are well educated, probably they are more, they do not have that stigma, fear of stigma. They are more amenable to come for psychiatric treatment. However, it is quite possible that, and you may be able to tell us better, that the IT sector seems to be more prone to having stressful, the effect of stress on the people. Now, to give a short CV of Mr. Vishnu Murthy Bhavraju, he is an executive MBA, strategy and operations from IIM Bangalore, Master of Computer Applications from Andhra University, PG Diploma in Counseling Psychology from the Indian Institute of Counseling, Delhi. He is an experienced IT professional with 20+ years of leadership experience in sales, consulting, and project management. He is a speaker at IT and manufacturing industry conferences, member of CII Smart Manufacturing Council. He is an executive MBA strategy and operations from Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore, with Director's Merit List Award. He is LinkedIn coaching. He is founding member of Phone a Counselor, a free counseling helpline. His professional experience includes Microsoft India Private Limited Director, Industry Solutions from 2015, Oracle India Private Limited Regional Sales Manager from 2013 to 15, Senior Consultant from 2008 to 2011. Before that, he was EMC India Private Limited Regional Sales Manager from 2011 to 13, and he was also with Tata Consultancy Services as Project Manager from 2000 to 2008. I welcome Mr. Bhavaraju to give his talk.
Thank you, Dr. Chaudhary, for your kind words and introduction. Good morning, everyone, to all the esteemed participants of this conference. Your service as mental health professionals is of great importance to the nation and to the society as well. So it is really an honor for me to be among you to share a perspective about what Dr. Chaudhary talked about, the various mental stressors in the IT industry. Dr. Chaudhary, may I seek your permission to make the presentation?
Yes, please.
Good morning. Nice. Yeah, so I come from the IT industry, as Dr. Chaudhary has introduced. I have spent about 21 years in this industry. Started as a software programmer when I started in this career. Then did project management, consulting, now managing sales. So I was fortunate to see different flavors of life in the IT industry. With that experience, this is a humble attempt to give you an insider perspective of what are the various stressors and challenges that people in the IT industry face about. This industry has been known to give better career prospects and all that. But still, why people go through the stress? What are those real unique stresses in the industry is what I'm trying to attempt to share with you all. Before I start, why don't you all take few seconds to build an image of what is an IT professional, what's the life of an IT professional. Right? I'll just leave few seconds with you to build that image. What is a typical image? You may have interacted with a few IT professionals in your friends and family circles, or you would have seen in movies. So try and build a quick image. I mean, don't worry about being right or wrong. Just try and build a quick image of how an IT professional looks like. Now, if the top of the mind image that comes to your mind is about a geek working in a swanky office, I wouldn't say your image is not very far off. On the other side, if you have gotten an image of a person overstressed, working long hours, highly disconnected from the world, even that image I would say is not very far off from the reality, because the reality, as usual, always it lies somewhere in between. It is a blend of both kind of images. Just like any other industries, IT industry comes with its own advantages. As I said, a good career prospect, a relatively safe work environment, a physical work environment rather. So there are advantages which this industry comes up with, but then there are certain complexities which also come with this industry. A very good summarization of life in IT is something that I heard very recently when I was talking to a young colleague of mine. She summarized the IT industry life as in 3 phases. Phase 1 is here am I phase. The phase 2 is the EMI phase, and the phase 3 is the who am I phase. That's how she summarized it, right? So the here am I is where people feel, oh, I have arrived working in this great IT company. Then comes a phase where they feel compelled to keep going on because there is a bank breathing down the neck and they have an EMI to pay. And then after a certain stage, they reach this who am I stage. What am I doing? Is this really something that I want to do in life? And that's when they really get into the stressful phase of their life as well. So those are the complexities which come in the life of an IT professional. And unfortunately, in the past 1 year, those complexities have only been aggravated because of the pandemic situation and people working from home. Here are some stats. They tell you a story about what's happening in the IT industry. And if you really want to validate these statistics, just meet any random IT professional and make a statement saying, oh, you work in IT industry. You are so lucky because you get to work from home. Right? You don't have to get out of home. And you would get the result of the reaction. You would see these statistics validated in the reaction. Right? So while work from home is a great flexibility, but it has also added a lot of stress to IT professionals because the already blurred lines between work and life have been totally erased now, right? They wake up in the morning thinking about work, they go to sleep thinking about work, and all through in between waking up and sleeping, what's is left on their mind is all about work, right? So that's the kind of life which has actually made a lot more stressful for people. Dr. Chaudhary at the introduction, he talked about a lot of IT professionals seeking help, a lot of IT professionals reporting mental stress issues, and the increasingly number of surveys are talking about it. I wouldn't paint a picture that life is very messed up right now, but there is an increasing incidences of stress increasing in the life of IT professionals. So for those who have not heard on this cartoon, here you see the Blue Whale Challenge. If you haven't heard about it, few years ago it used to be a social network or a social media game. It was a game of self-harming, different levels of self-harming, until the person would go ahead and commit a suicide in the last and 50th level of that game, right? And a lot of suicides in teenagers and other age groups have also been reported. People who got stuck into this blue whale kind of challenge. Now, this cartoon, obviously, any cartoon makes its points through exaggeration, right? It exaggerates a point. That's how the cartoon makes it funny. But what it also gives is a direction, a sense of direction of what is happening. Once a dream job it used to be in the IT industry, today it has become, like the cartoon says, it has become a lot more, I wouldn't say nightmarish, but it is very, very stressful. So how did this transformation from a dream job to a very highly, one of the most stressful jobs it has become? Mr. Raju just spoke about the stress in the sales industry, right? Apart from sales, if I take any other industry where people take work home because they can't get off of it, right? In sales, if you are working, your customer is 24/7 and you have to respond to the customer 24/7. So sales is a professional where people take work home. If you are working in a bank or if you are working in a manufacturing company, you don't take the work home. Once you get out of the bank or out of your shop floor, you're done for the work for the day. But that's not like in sales, and that's exactly what is reflected in the IT industry where people take work home a lot. So what I'm doing is I took this EHS. Most of you must be familiar with this acronym called EHS, Environment, Health and Safety. That's used in a different connotation in other industries like manufacturing. But in this case, what I'm using is, since it's a familiar acronym, I'm just using that, I'm leaning on that acronym to make it easier to categorize the stressors that we find in the IT industry. So when it comes to environmental stressors, right, which is the stress which comes from people around us or the work environment, the usual stressors that we see in the other industries like peer pressure, performance anxiety, pressure from the managers or bosses, role pressures. So all these pressures, even for some of the women, yes, sexual harassment. So those things are there even in this industry too, right? I mean, this industry is not immune to those kind of stressors. But what I would like to focus on, apart from the other stresses that probably you would all know, are three unique stressors that we find in the IT industry. I talked about people taking life back to home, the work-life balance. Let me state an incident that happened about a decade ago. This was with a 42-year-old CEO of a multinational company, and in those days he used to be the youngest CEO, and with a lot of energy and very well respected in the industry, very high flying career. And he was known to be a fitness freak too, right? Unlike a lot of IT folks who would not be very keen about going out of home or doing exercise and all that. So this gentleman, he was known to be a fitness freak, and all of a sudden he collapsed at his home with a massive heart attack, and then unfortunately and sadly he passed away. And that incident shook everyone to the core in this industry, because he was known to be a fitness freak. And how did this happen? So doctors did dissection, they did the root cause analysis and all that. So one of the key factors behind that sad incident that the doctors had later figured out and reported in the media was lack of sleep. Despite all his energy, or due to all his energy that he had, that CEO, he used to hardly take 4 hours sleep every day. And that really increased the stress in his life. And I'm no expert to talk to you about how lack of sleep impacts the circadian rhythms in our body. But what I can say is that that was the sad incident which happened, and those kind of incidents we keep hearing. And unfortunately, neither the industry nor many from the industry have figured out, as the cartoon says, have figured out how to deal with this work-life balance problem. That is still a large problem yet to be solved in this industry. The second is the tech exposure. So apart from this work-life balance, the other biggest factor is this continuous 24/7 exposure to the tech. People carry the phones, the emails are there. There is a continuous stream of messages coming through the day and through the weekend. And people feel compelled to respond to those messages, official messages, not just because the boss is copied, but they just feel isolated if they don't respond to a message. If they don't attend to a work, they feel disconnected with the work. So that technology in their hand is again a great stress factor for them. The another aspect of the tech exposure was well documented actually, or well illustrated in a movie called Her, H-E-R. If any of you watched it, if you are not, you should watch that movie. Very interesting movie, where the protagonist in the movie, he falls in love with an artificial intelligence system, a voice-based artificial intelligence system, which is running on his PC. Right? He gets disconnected. He minimizes his contact with the rest of the actual physical people, and falls actually literally in love with that artificial intelligence application, which is an abstract system running on his PC. While, obviously all those creative stuff exaggerates a point, but yes, that's the thing that happens in this industry. Even in my own personal life, in my early marital days, my wife used to complain that software used to be my first wife, and she got relegated to the second wife position. So that's a thing which happens in the life of IT professionals, right? They are always thinking about, how do I make this technology better? How do I work with this technology? So the technology is always playing on their mind, and that really impacts their emotional well-being. The third stressor, which is very, very unique to this IT industry, and this is, I would say, if I have to stack rank this, those two other are there, but this third one is catching up as the topmost stressor in the industry, which is the technology obsolescence. What's happening is, if you are in any other industry, like if you are in a vehicle industry, automotive industry, yes, there are new models keep coming in, but the core automotive technology doesn't change. It maybe changes once in 2 or 3 decades. Once the cars used to run on diesel or fuel or petrol, then came CNG, now maybe electric cars. But in IT industry, the technology is becoming obsolete every month, if not every quarter. Right? So people are always stressed about learning something. They have to learn something new, or they become obsolete in their skills. So they become inadequate, and they have questions, self-doubts about their employability itself. So the technology obsolescence is playing a major factor on the minds of the IT people, and learning is a great thing when it's done with passion, right? If you are passionate about something and you learn that with passion, it's a great reliever. But when learning is made compulsive, if they are compelled to learn something new, because if they don't learn, they will be out of job, that adds a lot of stress. So these are three very unique environmental stresses that people in IT industry face. Then coming to health, I talked about that CEO who had a major health issue, but personally, I have an example to share. This is long before, even before COVID. Yes, after COVID, because people were not getting out, they had vitamin D problems and all. But this was long before than COVID, several years ago. I noticed a distinct change in the walking pattern of one of my colleagues. And there was a different kind of waddling kind of behavior when he was walking. And then a few days later, he started appearing like he was losing control on his legs when he was walking. So I advised him to go and see a doctor. And when he went and got himself diagnosed, he had a severe deficiency of vitamin D, because of which all his joints and bones were getting weak. And there was an article in one of the medical journals which actually indicated statistically and how major this is an issue of musculoskeletal problems in IT industry, because of their posture, because of the static life, sitting at one place for long hours. And the statistics are very, very startling. 56% of people, when they did the survey, I think they did the survey in 2015. We have to see what the latest survey says. But in 2015, when this survey was published, 56% of people were struggling from musculoskeletal problems. 22% had newly discovered hypertension, and more than 10% in the IT industry have, those even in 30s have diabetes. So that's a kind of physical health problems that the people in IT industry face. And it's not just the quality of life which gets impacted because of physical health issues, but it also impacts their productivity. And again, it's a vicious cycle of stress at work. Then the financial health. That rather may sound a little weird, because IT industry is known to give better career prospects. But human mind always plays in relative terms. So it is always, and since, as I talked about, the skill set is very, very varied in IT industry, right? It's not about just one skill. Technologies are changing every day. So based on the skill set, the pay also is hugely varied. People of similar experience, two people of similar experience may be earning very, very wide, may see very disparity in the paychecks that they get at the end of the month. So that kind of puts a lot of stress, a lot of pressure on them. It's rather more of a perceptive financial health problem than a real financial health. Some people may be bad at managing their financial dealings, but leaving that, a lot of people are always in the state of complaining that, no, I didn't get enough raise, I didn't get this, I didn't get that. They're always in a state of discontentment about their financial health. More of a perception, but maybe that's an anecdotal information that I can share, but we would like to see more formal research about how that plays in the IT industry. Then the health of relationships. Because of all these other stress factors, the biggest impact that happens is on the interpersonal relationships. And in fact, a few years ago, the IT city of India, which is the IT capital of India, Bangalore, has earned a tag, rather a notorious tag of becoming the divorce capital of India. Now, what needs to be seen is this really something a bad trend? Because it may be because divorces are on the rise, because the financial independence of the women, they may be taking up, otherwise they would have put up with a very bad marital status. They would have taken a decision. But is that the reason, or is it the stress in the industry causing the divorces? That's more of a qualitative research needs to be done. But yes, there is a lot of impact on the health of relationships with spouses, with kids, with friends. So the health of relationships is, and as I said, connecting back to the point that I talked about, as a technology is a constant factor in the mind of people, their emotional status also gets impacted of that, and that shows in their relationships. Now, coming to the safety, I talked about how IT industry provides a rather safe work environment. Yes, if you're working in a manufacturing company, you could trip off over a spilled chemical. There could, or if someone is working in the construction industry, there could be an accident there happening. So at least in an IT industry, those kind of work, physical work environment related safety issues are relatively lesser. But what's the safety issue that the people in the IT industry worry a lot about is the job safety. Again, just going back to the point on the technology obsolescence, it's continuously playing on the mind. Everything is very in a flux, continuous state of flux. People have to be in a state of race every day, every moment of their life. So they are always constantly worried about losing the job. And so this is from a framework which was put forth in 1983 by Dr. Parikh. I think it is a very widely used framework to create an index or to measure the organization role stress in various industries. So what I did is I picked up the 10 role stressors that Dr. Parikh had indicated. I've listed here and I've given an example of all of these. I'm not going to talk about all the 10, but I'll pick few of these. For instance, inter-role distance, which is how the role distinction, how people can manage that from their professional role versus their personal role, that we talked about work-life balance. But one of the things that I would like to highlight is the role stagnation that Dr. Parikh talked about. So how it plays in the IT industry is it's a lot of apparent stuff than a real stuff, again, like I talked about the financial health, where people feel stuck. And they feel stuck in their job in a span of 1 to 2 years. If you go to any other industry, people may be working on the same profile, same role for 10, 15 years, still charged up, or at least still getting along with that role without having a lot of discontentment. But in IT industry, people get bored. If you find an IT employee, you would see, oh, I have done this in past 2, 3 years, and I am looking forward to what I do next. So there is this lot of role stagnation which piles up in the people of, and again, that's a more of a relative factor, right? Because there's a lot of options available in the industry. So people keep always experimenting, what do I do next, rather than thinking about how do I excel in what I'm doing. So that again creates a lot of stress, that role stagnation. Then there is another aspect of this role erosion. So all of you would have heard about this artificial intelligence and automation happening in everyday life of us. Even our TVs are becoming intelligent. Our phones have become a lot more intelligent than what we are today. And that artificial intelligence is, it's making several roles in the IT industry redundant. And that adds, again, a lot of job safety stressor in the life of IT professionals. Then the role isolation. So as you work from home, there is a flexibility to work from home, but at the same time, you feel disconnected from the team. Your role seems disconnected. Your role significance has diminished. So that's a kind of role isolation people face when they work from home, when they use the flexibility to work from home, but at the same time, they also have this concern about they're not being connected with the rest of the folks in the team or in the organization. Then the personal inadequacy. I talked about the technology obsolescence and how it leads to the personal inadequacy. Another factor in this space, in the IT industry, is ageism. Ageism is where the HR teams or the recruitment teams would look at hiring a rather younger professional so that they can pay less and get more work done than someone, let's say, in late 30s, 40s, or 50s, right? Yes, experience is respected in the industry. I'm not saying that experienced people are not, but at the same time, there is also an ageism factor which exists, where for some of the roles, a lot more younger people are preferred than experienced people, right? So that actually leads to a lot of personal inadequacy, because people would have spent a lot of time in their life in this industry not knowing what to do next, but then seeing or encountering the reality of diminishing career prospects because of they growing up in their age ladder. Then the role ambiguity, because IT industry is very, very flexible, and what we created a lot more abstract products. Like if you talk to a car manufacturer, they actually make a car. You can actually look and feel and touch and see how it looks like. But whereas in IT industry, what people create is a lot of abstract products. So since the product itself is created in an abstract fashion, which means is that a lot of roles will have that abstractness imbibed into those roles, which means they don't know what exactly their role is, but the expectations from the managers are very high. So that adds a lot of stress. So this role ambiguity or lack of clarity in the role is another very unique feature of IT industry, I would say, and a unique stressor in the IT industry. So as I talked about the personal inadequacy of various reasons, whether it is ageism, whether it is because of the technology obsolescence, one of the things which is happening in the IT industry today is a mid-career crisis. And when we say mid-career crisis, a typical mid-career crisis in other industry, we would imagine about 40s or maybe early 50s. But what's happening in the IT industry is you would see even people in late 20s, 30s as well, facing this mid-career crisis. They spend some time, they start early in the career, they start with a lot of expectations, and those expectations reach a peak, and then suddenly there is this trough of disillusionment. Now, if I overlay this life of an IT professional on the pyramid of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it is like climbing up all those 4 steps in the pyramid, and then either getting lost between the 4th and 5th step, which is the self-actualization, or actually rather worse, falling down from the 4th step and not knowing who they are. That's the kind of disillusionment which is creeping up in several people, if not all, in the IT industry. And this is where I think the Industrial Psychiatry Forum, like you, can add a lot of value and help a lot of people to build better perspective about what they want to do in their life, what is it that they want to do, or how they should view their career about. This is where I think there's a lot of help that can come. And this is a major crisis today, a lot of people in this industry are going through. And obviously, once those people are helped through, get over this trough of disillusionment, get a better perspective of their life, obviously that goes into the slope of enlightenment phase. Actually, this is not my theory. So this is based on something called Gartner hype cycle. So Gartner gives this hype cycle, this is exactly curve as it is shown, for technologies in the industry, where every technology starts with a trigger point, it goes to inflated expectations, and then people get disillusioned about the technology, and then technology used in the right way. So even people in this technology industry also go through this hype cycle of their career. And lastly, just to conclude, the call to action, what is it that a forum like you, mental health professionals, what is it that you can do to help this industry? One, research. The research right now on the mental health issues in IT industry is, I would say it's still in early stages, not much. As I talked about Dr. Parikh's model of those 10 role stressors, each one of that itself could be a big research opportunity to look at. And I'm not saying this just for the IT industry, which today in India is about 5 million strong employees. But because of the digitalization which is happening, every company is hiring, even an automotive manufacturer or a pharmaceutical company, any industry, or a steel manufacturer, everyone are hiring a lot of IT people because everything is digital now. So the number of IT people is increasing, and so there's a lot of need for this research. Mr. Raju also talked about the collaboration with the HR at organization level, how you can work with HR to create new mitigation strategies for stress management. Then at an individual level, I talked about building better career and life perspectives with IT professionals. That is something that you can do at the individual level. So with that, I conclude my talk. If there are any queries, I'll be very happy to take those queries. And I thank AIPA and the organizing committee for giving me this opportunity to present this perspective. Thank you so much, Dr. Chaudhary.
Thank you, Mr. Raju. The paper is now open for any comments or questions. I think I'll thank Mr. Vishnu Bhavaraju. We will continue this discussion later. This is a fascinating topic. And especially, I am personally interested in studying about the IT industry. So we'll be in touch. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir, for chairing the session. And we are indebted to our speakers for sharing so much relevant and articulated information with us. Thank you so much, respected sirs. We'll now take a short tea break spanning for 10 minutes from now to 11:45 a.m. Kindly be back for the second session after this short break. Thank you.
Support trade is very low to see.
तुझे आ रहा है तुझे आ रहा है और तो नहीं आ रहा है अभी देखो सर अभी आएगा इसकी आवाज आ रही इधर से आवाज आ रही बस मेरा ऑडियो चालू करेगा नहीं तो बंद कर
అదే స్వర్గము. అరే ఎప్పుడు వచ్చారు? నీకు తపోభంగం కలిగించావా? లేదు, నా తపస్సుకు మెచ్చి ఆది దంపతులు ప్రత్యక్షం అయ్యారు. మరి ఆపేశావే, పాడు.
So we can hear the video being played. Sir?
అదే స్వర్గం.
Is it heard?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It is. Sir, it is. Yes.
Are you able to hear?
Yes, sir. We can hear it, sir. We
Audio
can
and
hear it
video
just
both.
fine.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Both.
Okay. Then we'll close it. Now
right.
you tell me what is the next presentation and how long it will take? Any delay is going on, madam?
No, sir. No delay.
Any delay
now
or is it on time?
So we will be starting the next presentation from 11:45 and it will go until 12:15, sir.
I'm grateful to
After
Brigadier
that,
Raju sir and the organizers of the All India
After
Conference
that,
of the
12:15.
Association
What
of
is the next session?
Psychiatry of India
from
for giving an
12:15
opportunity
to
No, mine is
12:45.
supposed to be at
to talk
12:30,
on how
reaching
the
greater
Indian
heights in
Navy
life. But
handles
before
Yes,
this,
sir.
two sessions or
in
one
the
session now?
audience.
So yours will commence from 12:45 p.m., sir.
So now we have got another two sessions before me. Is it not?
Yes, sir. That's right, sir. That's right.
No, 11:45 to 12:15. What is the session, madam?
Sir, it is a session by Surgeon Vice Admiral A.A. Pawar on how the Indian Navy manages stress. And from 12:15 to 12:45, it is by Dr. Colonel Sojan Baby on borderline personality with a case vignette disorder during COVID times. So after that, from 12:45, both your sessions will begin, sir.
Okay, after that, mine will come. Okay,
Yes, sir. That's
this
right.
reaching greater heights in life is mine.
That's
okay.
right. Sir.
Okay,
That's right.
so now it is another 1 hour from now.
Yes.
Okay, then. Okay,
Yes.
then. Thank you.
Thank you so
So
much.
we'll close it.
I'll cover my topic under the following
Close it
heads.
now. Log out. Okay.
Once.
Core of
Yes,
the
sir.
Navy, types of and conflicts between military and family responsibilities. But we also need to measure stress to find out how to protect the situation in our service.
So anything else, sir? Maybe help you with anything else, sir?